Hello, everyone. Know the value of a burning tongue. And I am really meaning this very existentially. And in a sense, you find that a human being in his life finds a way where his reality is questioned and he can communicate back his certainty. Should you do it? Should you tell the world around you that you know something that they don't? Well, you recognize that you need to look at the nature of intention, and in other words, the underlying feelings that are, in a sense, sparking you to act in this way. Because once you create a fire, if it's not handled properly, it will burn. It will burn some things. What that means is that you will see that perhaps some of the most beautiful responses that formless grace could ever say to a question was that you can't understand the multidimensionality with that attitude, in which that you see the person asking the question is no longer reaching an answer that others can give him. So you're seeing that the intelligence is deep in a way that a simple response from anything outside of you does not satisfy an internal longing. For an internal longing is simply an alignment of your gaze with what is actually happening to you. I'm pretty sure many people have in their life gone through periods where they do not understand why they're doing certain things the way they do, but as a result, I guess the heaviness of the world is not a stranger to some men's shoulders. You will see that cognition leads to an awareness of condition, which leads to an awareness of co-creation. And so co-creation leads to an awareness of creation. And from creation, we look that which is here. And that which is here is always present now. And so what is perhaps the peak of the mountain is the highest point before the next steps are once done with invisible feet. Throughout human life, there are many points and periods where questions come. These questions have a purpose. Questions open up your mind to then see polarities, to then become aware of unified expressions, in a sense which you become aware that your purpose is one that is understood through your creative expressionism at the peak of it. And at the peak of your performance, you're no longer thinking, you're no longer a performer, you're simply an expression of life, emanating who you are or what you are, or all that is. You see, the conditioning that we have constantly is there to remind us, and in a sense is fueling our inspiration in the future. The things we didn't have before are in a sense creating reference points in which we can seek in our future. So your desire and what you're attracting to yourself, there's nothing wrong with it. What is wrong is your attitude in which you then organize and try to measure God's actions if you are a believer in God. What that means is that man follows a certain path, but in order for him to be able to follow that path, he needs to have certainty only in that path, or he wouldn't be walking on it. So you will see that there are many ladders which are only calling people to themselves, but in a sense are leading to the same platform of knowing, in which the collective consciousness of all beings finds itself flowing naturally. And so what I mean by that is that right now is the only time in the world where I can say the word naturally. Because eventually when the consciousness of man blooms into its more collective bodies, it will recognize that physicality could never define its greater experience. And when you recognize this, you're involved in your life in a way where it's not that just everything is being provided for you. It's that you are providing everything that you need by simply being who you are. When they say be yourself, there is an existential depth in there which suggests that the man who is being is simply always presently progressing. When you see that your measurements are really valuable for you and meaningless for others, you recognize that man's greatest awareness of his construction must come from its deconstruction. And so we're in a sense deconstruction, and so we're in a sense given the ability to mentally deconstruct ourselves many times in the different conditions we go, and in a sense, through a sense of self-awareness, explore many cycles of change in one long cycle of change, which is our walk from our birth to our death. You see, birth and death are simply like night and day. And so when you see a cycle that spins, you know that even how you know things is very cyclical in its attendance to you. Do not worry about what is happening or what will happen, and in a sense be present in any situation, condition, or reality that you are. As a being, your immediate awareness of the moment connects you to a sense of allowance to find that existence is not doing anything wrong. When perhaps many prisoners, I've recommended this, that we create this program where prisoners are put out in wildlife and in nature and in Zen gardens or areas like that, because they see that their mind begins to absorb the gentleness of how nature grows. You go be by nature, you see that regardless, nature has a patience because it knows of its greater design. And so when you become aware of your greater design, you will no longer have doubt present in senses of self that thought they couldn't do things. You become a dynamic awareness to yourself where you are an openness to any experience without having that experience be shaped. You're simply the presence that is present. And in this, guys, there's great knowing. Because once you become aware of your presence, you then begin learning from it. It begins showing you things. And so that is why I am, in a sense, speaking very rhythmically. Look at who you are. Look at what you are. Regardless of the language man has made for itself, we are always silently and in a still way comfortable with everything that's happening because we are life. The essence that inspires all things to survive is within us regardless of comparison. So in other words, we are all looking at the same sun. Regardless of the many sons who have sought the Heavenly Fathers. Sometimes your greatest teachings come to you through a certain pattern of your memory, and you see that there is one type of lesson where you're here and you understand something and wow, you suddenly feel good, and there's another where you're suddenly, in a sense, directed by your own intention into a collective observance, formless observance of your memory. In other words, you can go back into your memory and experience them in different orders. So in other words, think of how many ways a Rubik's Cube can be spun, or moved. So similarly, you see, internally we have an ability to present ourselves in many ways that are real to us. Practice is not just for perfection. Practice is for maintenance because it keeps the idea around. If you practice a healthy habit or something healthy, you will attain. Because it is impossible, because your attention is constantly looking at the thing. In other words, if a person is constantly, how would I would like to share a story and it's a Shaolin story. And there was this young son who his parents and his own interest takes him to a Shaolin temple, and he simply bows down to a master and says, "Teacher, teach me," without words, in a sense, with his simple bow. And so he shaves his head, and the next day he is told by his master to go in a room and have a bucket and just constantly with the palm of his hands to slap it. However, all the other students are doing other things. He's just been told. And so he doesn't understand it, but he can't say anything because the teacher is wise and he finds himself a novice. And so he goes, and for 4 years, this kid, every day, he asks the master, "Can I change?" He says no. Every day the kid goes, and with the palm of his hand, he hits a bucket of water, you know? And when I say he hits the water, he hits the surface of the water constantly. Both hands, constantly he hits it. And that's it. For 4 years, he's just doing this. And after 4 years, they're given a break, you know? So they're said, "All right, you can go to your parents." And the kid is still doing that, and he's like, "What do I say to my parents?" And he has this sense of anxiety come in, you know? And he's like, "Wow, Shaolin warriors are supposed to be tough, but I don't know what to say. I've just hit water in a bucket. I haven't learned anything. I haven't learned any Kung Fu." So when the kid goes home, he sees that it's not that it was just his stress about it. His family has been waiting for him, and they are expecting like when he walks into the town, he sees that in the eyes of his family, he's no longer that child. They see a Shaolin fighter, but they are still curious, so they want to ask him questions, and they constantly ask him, "How was it, and what did you learn?" And you know, so at the supper table, this Shaolin monk sitting with his parents, and you know, being there, he just gets so angry, and he says, "I haven't learned anything." And he gets in his anger, in his response to his family asking him, what have you learned? He hits the table, and in a sense, he kind of gets up by hitting the table, right? And this huge, thick wooden table gets destroyed immediately. It was as if this kid and the whole family suddenly gets the answer to their question, "What have you learned?" And they realize the truth of the Shaolin ability, of the Shaolin monks. It's real. And what that in a sense means is that you may think some things are unnecessary for your life. However, they are necessary to strengthen other elements which will help in the next thing you're supposed to confront. It cannot be irrelevant. Your experience now is relevant to every experience you've had and the ones you're going to have. You make it irrelevant, you ignore it, and so the knowing still continues. Sometimes we want to remember something, we don't know what it is, but it still gets refabricated in our imagination in a certain way. So what I'm pretty much saying with all this is that Shaolin monk understood that the lesson came after what he had cultivated. So we see that in life, after we work, after we get dissolved in our passion and suddenly create and burst out ideas and words and, you know, begin acting in productive ways, we are cultivating an ability to even appreciate what we're getting, you know? It's the surface of the water in that bucket is as much of your teacher as the Shaolin master, if you were that kid. You will see that You are right now comfortable in a sense of knowing that is informed. What that means is that based on different ideas and different judgments and different ways of looking at it and thinking about it and rationality and logical patterns, you are appreciating an acceptance of your reality. However, if you stop linearly analyzing everything and in a sense just look at what is here as you will see that your attention to new senses of yourself or new views of yourself creates a potential of action in you. So if you suddenly are given a vision just like Noah, you will act, you will have the reality of that dream. You will know the realness to be inspired. And so as you are a bridge to your past and your future, always see yourself carrying all that you know into the knowing that was always known once it is seen. Once you have entered the pool of self-awareness, there is no lie that can convince you that your skin is dry. Because once you become aware of your seat and the chair, you will innately see that where your foundation is standing upon is of another foundation and another, in a sense, pattern in this great pattern we call life. So, in a sense, you need to allow yourself to be aware of yourself and stop literally thinking about language or using language. Understand that the silence is always there, and the silent provides the greatest ability to confront noise. Silence and stillness become things of interest, not things to avoid. Oh, I'm so lonely. Oh, not that. You realize that once you are lonely, you truly recognize the value of closeness. And so life adjusts its sensitivities natural. And so allow yourself to be inspired by both your known sense of being and your unknown sense of being, and how they are always playfully dancing. For soon we will remember the voice of galaxies. And so our greatest symbols of our distance become our teachers of the closest method in which man can look through his own eyes. For through wonder, you always rise. Much blessings and namaste.